Hello everyone, and welcome back to Gone Legends. In today's video, we remember 7 beloved figures who left us recently. Artists, actors, and creators whose lives changed entertainment forever. Before we begin, please show your support by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Now, let's celebrate their remarkable stories.
Ace Frehley, the man the world came to know as the Spaceman, was born on April 27, 1951, in the Bronx, New York. From his earliest days, music was his escape, and the guitar quickly became his voice. Drawn to the raw power of rock and roll, Ace developed a sound that was explosive, innovative, and instantly recognizable. In 1973, he co-founded the legendary band Kiss, alongside Paul Stanley, Gene Simmons, and Peter Criss. With his iconic silver makeup and electrifying stage presence, Ace Frehley became a cornerstone of the band's identity. His blistering solos, smoke-shooting guitar effects, and cosmic energy transformed live performances into unforgettable spectacles. Songs like Shock Me, Cold Gin, and Rocket Ride showcased not just his skill, but his fearless creativity. Ace's guitar work defined the spirit of Kiss. He brought a blend of melody and aggression that inspired generations of musicians and gave the band a sound unlike any other. As the lead guitarist, he helped propel Kiss into superstardom, from packed arenas to global fame, turning them into one of the most influential rock bands in history. After leaving Kiss in 1982, Ace launched a successful solo career. His debut solo album, released in 1978, produced the hit single New York Groove, a song that became an anthem for his hometown and a rock classic in its own right. Over the years, he released multiple albums, each filled with his signature riffs and space-themed flair, proving that his artistry extended far beyond his days with the band. Behind the scenes, Ace faced personal struggles, with fame, addiction, and the pressures of the spotlight, but through it all, he remained unapologetically himself. His rebellious spirit, sense of humor, and unfiltered honesty made him one of rock's most authentic voices. To his fans, Ace wasn't just a musician, he was a symbol of independence and resilience, proof that creativity can thrive even in chaos. On August 3, 2025, Ace Frehley passed away at the age of 74. His death marked the end of an era for rock and roll. Tributes poured in from fans and artists worldwide, celebrating the man whose music shaped their lives. Ace Frehley's legacy lives on in every guitar riff that dares to break boundaries, in every stage light that burns a little brighter, and in every dreamer who picks up a guitar and believes they can touch the stars. He will forever remain the Spaceman, the sound, the fire, and the freedom of rock and roll itself. Diane Keaton, born on January 5, 1946, in Los Angeles, California, was one of the most distinctive and beloved figures in Hollywood history. With her quirky charm, effortless humor, and fearless individuality, she redefined what it meant to be a leading lady. Her journey to stardom began on the stage, where she appeared in the original Broadway production of Hair. But it was her film debut in The Godfather, 1972, that first brought her widespread recognition. As Kay Adams, she brought depth and realism to a role that could have easily been overshadowed by the film's towering male characters. Her performance hinted at the emotional intelligence that would become her trademark. Diane Keaton's true breakthrough came with Woody Allen's Annie Hall, 1977, a role that earned her the Academy Award for Best Actress and changed the course of romantic comedies forever. With her sharp wit, endearing awkwardness, and iconic sense of style, the bowler hats, oversized blazers, and ties, she created a character that audiences instantly fell in love with. Annie Hall wasn't just a movie, it was a cultural moment, and Keaton became its heart. Throughout her 5-decade career, Diane Keaton continued to light up the screen in both comedic and dramatic roles. From Manhattan and Reds to Baby Boom, Father of the Bride, and Something's Gotta Give, she proved again and again that talent and authenticity never go out of style. Her performances combined vulnerability and strength, humor and heartbreak, always with that unmistakable Diane Keaton spirit. Off-screen, Keaton was just as remarkable. She became known for her bold fashion sense, often choosing comfort and originality over trends, inspiring generations to embrace their individuality. She was also a passionate advocate for historic preservation, dedicating years to restoring old buildings in Los Angeles and protecting the city's architectural heritage. On August 10, 2025, Diane Keaton passed away peacefully at the age of 79. Her death left Hollywood mourning the loss of one of its most authentic voices, a woman who brought light, laughter, and a refreshing honesty to every role she played. Diane Keaton leaves behind a legacy of courage, creativity, and independence. She taught the world that true beauty lies in being unapologetically yourself. With every smile, every laugh, and every perfectly imperfect moment, she made Hollywood and the world a little braver, a little warmer, and a lot more human. Michael Eugene Archer, known to the world as D'Angelo, was born on February 11, 1974, in Richmond, Virginia. From his earliest days, music ran through his veins. The son of a Pentecostal preacher, he grew up surrounded by gospel harmonies, church choirs, and the raw emotion of spiritual music, sounds that would later shape his unmistakable style. In the mid-1990s, D'Angelo emerged as one of the most influential voices in neo-soul, a movement that revived the heart of classic soul and R&B for a new generation. His debut album, Brown Sugar, 1995, changed everything. With songs like Lady and Cruisin', he reintroduced warmth, groove, and intimacy to a music scene dominated by digital polish. His voice was velvet, soft yet powerful, smooth yet filled with emotion, and his artistry paid tribute to legends like Marvin Gaye, Prince, and Al Green, while carving out a sound entirely his own. 5 years later came Voodoo, 2000, a masterpiece that solidified D'Angelo as a true innovator. It was more than an album, it was a movement. With its deep funk rhythms, jazz improvisation, and spiritual undertones, Voodoo won the Grammy Award for Best R&B Album and earned D'Angelo worldwide acclaim. The single Untitled, How Does It Feel, became iconic, not only for its sensuality but for the purity of emotion it conveyed. After years of silence and personal struggle, D'Angelo returned with Black Messiah in 2014, an album that spoke directly to the times. Fueled by themes of social justice, faith, and resilience, it arrived amid protests and political unrest, giving voice to a generation demanding change. Critics hailed it as a bold, fearless statement from an artist who had always followed his heart, not the charts. On July 22, 2025, D'Angelo passed away at the age of 51 after a brief illness. The news shocked fans and fellow musicians alike. Tributes poured in from every corner of the music world, from R&B and hip-hop artists to jazz and gospel legends, all acknowledging the same truth. D'Angelo wasn't just a performer, he was a bridge between past and future, carrying the soul of Black music forward with honesty and depth. His legacy is timeless. D'Angelo's sound continues to echo in artists like Anderson .Paak, Frank Ocean, and Her, proof that his influence transcends generations. He reminded us that real soul music isn't just about melody, it's about truth, vulnerability, and the courage to express emotion without compromise. D'Angelo's voice may have fallen silent, but his spirit lives on in every groove, every harmony, and every heart that still beats to the rhythm of his music. He proved that soul never dies. It just finds new voices to carry it forward. John Lodge. Born on July 20, 1945, in Birmingham, England, was more than a musician, he was a poet of sound. As the bassist, vocalist, and songwriter for the legendary band the Moody Blues, he helped define a genre that bridged rock, philosophy, and emotion. Though British by birth, John Lodge became a beloved figure in American rock culture. His deep, resonant voice and melodic bass lines gave the Moody Blues their distinctive character, a sound both introspective and uplifting. Through songs like Ride My Seesaw, I'm Just a Singer, in a Rock and Roll Band, and Isn't Life Strange, he brought to life music that asked questions about existence, love, and the human journey. Lodge joined the Moody Blues in the mid-1960s, as rock was evolving into a new form of art. Alongside bandmates Justin Hayward, Graham Edge, Ray Thomas, and Mike Pinder, He helped craft the group's signature blend of orchestral arrangements and poetic lyrics, a sound that would later be known as progressive rock. Albums like Days of Future Past and A Question of Balance broke boundaries, blending classical influences with rock and spirituality. For more than 5 decades, John Lodge toured the world, performing to devoted audiences who found comfort and inspiration in his music. Even in his later years, he remained active, recording solo albums, collaborating with fellow musicians, and connecting with fans who had followed him since the 1960s. His passion for music never faded, and his performances carried the same sincerity and warmth that first made him a star. Beyond his artistry, Lodge was known for his humility and deep faith. He often spoke about his gratitude for life, his family, and the privilege of sharing his music with the world. His approach to fame was quiet and graceful, always focused on the message, never the spotlight. On August 2, 2025, John Lodge passed away peacefully at the age of 80. The news left fans across the globe heartbroken, yet profoundly thankful for the beauty he left behind. John Lodge's music remains timeless, a bridge between intellect and emotion, between the ordinary and the divine. He will be remembered as a man whose songs lifted minds, moved souls, and reminded us all that music, when made with love, never truly dies. Roberta Alexander, the acclaimed American soprano whose voice captured the world's heart, was born on March 3, 1949, in Lynchburg, Virginia. From her earliest years, music surrounded her. The daughter of a minister and a pianist, she grew up singing in church, where her extraordinary gift for expression first took flight. After studying music at Central State University and the University of Michigan, Roberta began a journey that would carry her to the most prestigious stages in the world. Her voice, radiant, pure, and emotionally charged, soon became her passport to international acclaim. She performed with the Metropolitan Opera, the Royal Opera House, and countless leading orchestras across the United States and Europe. Her repertoire spanned from the graceful beauty of Mozart's heroines to the soulful power of Gershwin's American classics, each performance marked by her signature elegance and deep emotional connection. Critics often described her voice as pure gold, warm yet agile, capable of soaring with clarity and tenderness in equal measure. Whether singing Pamina in the Magic Flute or Bess in Porgy and Bess, Roberta Alexander had a rare ability to make every note feel like a personal story shared with the audience. Beyond the spotlight, she was known for her humility, warmth, and dedication to teaching. Roberta spent much of her later life mentoring young singers, helping them find not only their technique but their emotional truth through music. To her students, she was more than a teacher, she was an inspiration. On July 28, 2025, Roberta Alexander passed away at the age of 76. The news brought deep sorrow to the classical music world, which lost one of its most luminous voices. Yet her presence remains, in her recordings, in her students, and in the memories of all who were moved by her artistry. Roberta Alexander will forever be remembered as a voice of grace and depth, a performer who brought both discipline and soul to her craft. Her music continues to echo through concert halls, homes, and hearts, a golden sound that time can never silence. Samantha Eggar, the elegant and captivating actress whose presence graced both British and American cinema, was born on March 5, 1939, in London, England. From the moment she appeared on screen, her poise, intelligence, and emotional depth set her apart as one of the most distinctive talents of her generation. Eggar's journey into acting began on the stage, where her classical training quickly caught the attention of filmmakers. Her breakthrough came in 1965 with The Collector, a psychological thriller directed by William Wyler. In it, she delivered a haunting and unforgettable performance as Miranda Gray, a young woman held captive, yet defiant and complex in spirit. The role earned her an Academy Award nomination and won her the Golden Globe for Best Actress, catapulting her to international fame. Following her success, Eggar enjoyed a career that showcased her incredible versatility. She moved effortlessly between genres, starring in dramas, thrillers, and even family films. Audiences around the world came to know her as Eliza Doolittle's companion in Dr. Dolittle, 1967, and later as one of the faces of science fiction and suspense in films like The Brood and The Time Machine. Beyond the big screen, Samantha Eggar became a familiar presence on television, appearing in hit series throughout the 1970s, 80s, and 90s. She also lent her distinctive, refined voice to animated and narration work, proving that her artistry extended far beyond acting alone. Off-screen, Eggar was known for her grace, wit, and quiet strength. She was admired not only for her beauty, but for the intelligence and humanity she brought to every performance. Colleagues often described her as a consummate professional, fiercely dedicated to her craft, yet always humble and kind. On August 8, 2025, Samantha Eggar passed away peacefully at the age of 86. Her passing marked the end of a remarkable career that bridged continents and generations. Samantha Eggar will be remembered as a symbol of timeless elegance, an actress who could convey vulnerability and power in equal measure. Her performances, whether in haunting thrillers or heartwarming family films, continue to remind us of what true artistry looks like. Though the curtain has fallen on her life, her light still shines through every frame she ever graced, a lasting legacy of talent, beauty, and truth. Tony Fitzpatrick was born on January 24, 1958, in Chicago, Illinois, a city that would become both his lifelong home and the beating heart of his art. He was more than just an artist. He was a storyteller, a poet, and an observer of the world around him, whose work captured the beauty and struggle of everyday American life. Fitzpatrick's art was instantly recognizable. His drawings and collages were a kaleidoscope of vivid imagery: birds, saints, boxers, flames, and city streets, all layered with fragments of poetry and memories. He had an uncanny ability to take the rough edges of working-class Chicago and transform them into something deeply human and spiritual. His art blended street culture with fine art, bridging the gap between the gallery and the neighborhood, between the sacred and the ordinary. Over the decades, his work was showcased in major galleries and museums across the United States, earning him praise as one of the most authentic and original American voices of his generation. Fitzpatrick's pieces are part of collections at the Museum of Modern Art, the Art Institute of Chicago, and numerous others, a testament to the timeless power of his vision. But Tony Fitzpatrick wasn't limited to visual art. He was also a writer, actor, and performer, known for his bold personality and poetic storytelling. He appeared in films like Primal Fear and Philadelphia, and he collaborated with musicians and fellow creatives including Steve Earle and Lou Reed, whose own artistic spirits resonated with his. Together, they wove art and music into tributes to working-class heroes, saints, and dreamers. Despite his growing fame, Tony remained fiercely loyal to his roots. He often described Chicago not just as a city, but as a living, breathing character in his work, a place of grit, grace, and contradiction. Through his art, he gave voice to the forgotten and dignity to the everyday. On August 5, 2025, Tony Fitzpatrick passed away at the age of 67. His death marked the loss of a true American original, a man whose creativity, honesty, and fearlessness reminded the world that art doesn't come from perfection, but from passion and truth. Tony Fitzpatrick will be remembered as a visionary who saw beauty where others saw chaos, and who turned ordinary life into poetry. His art endures as a living conversation with the streets, skies, and souls of America, a legacy that will continue to inspire generations of artists yet to come. Gladys Maria Knight was born on May 28, 1944, in Atlanta, Georgia, into a family where music was not just entertainment, it was a way of life. She grew up surrounded by gospel hymns, church harmonies, and the warmth of family voices blending together in small living rooms after long days. Her parents, Merrill and Sarah Knight, worked hard to support their children, and they believed deeply in faith, in love, and in the power of music to carry the soul through good times and bad. They encouraged Gladys to sing, not for applause, but because they could feel something special in her voice. At just 4 years old, she began singing in the church choir, her voice clear, warm, and startlingly mature for a child. People in the congregation turned their heads when she sang, not just because she hit the notes, but because she sang with emotion. Even as a child, she sang as though she had already lived a lifetime. When she was 8 years old, Gladys entered and won TEDx Original Amateur Hour, a national talent competition broadcast across the United States. Millions heard her voice for the first time. And in that moment, the path of her life changed forever. But Gladys did not start her journey alone. Her family, her brother Merrill Bubba Knight, her sister Brenda, and 2 cousins, joined together to form a small singing group. They called themselves the Pips, named after a beloved family member nicknamed Pip. They performed at local talent shows, community gatherings, and small stages across Georgia. They were young, determined, and not yet aware that they were building something historic. But the road was not easy. These were the segregated days of America, a time when black performers were allowed to be heard, but not always welcomed. They traveled long distances to perform, sometimes sleeping in cars, sometimes turned away from hotels and restaurants. Yet through every difficulty, one thing remained constant: Gladys Knight's voice. A voice that carried strength when the world was unkind. A voice that comforted them when money was scarce and the future uncertain. A voice that promised something bigger, even when life was small. By the time Gladys reached her teenage years, she was not just a girl who could sing. She was a girl who could move people. Her voice had depth, pain, hope, and soul, qualities many singers spend entire careers trying to master. She had it naturally. And slowly, the world began to notice. The Pips continued performing, recording small records, touring wherever they could. And Gladys, quiet, serious, and focused, became the emotional center of the group. Every song she sang contained a story. Every note she held came from the deepest part of her heart. Her family saw it. Her community felt it. But soon, the whole world would hear it. Because Gladys Knight was on the edge of a breakthrough that would transform her from a talented young woman into a legend. As the 1960s began, Gladys Knight and the Pips were no longer just a family group from Georgia. They had become a rising force, steady, hardworking, and deeply connected through blood, music, and trust. While other groups were shaped and manufactured by record companies, the Pips were formed out of love and lineage, and that bond would become their greatest strength. They practiced relentlessly, not because someone demanded perfection, but because they respected the music. Gladys was the lead voice, powerful and emotional. The Pips were the heartbeat behind her, blending harmonies, choreography, and presence. Their unity was unmistakable. But the journey forward was not smooth. In the music industry, especially for black artists, success was not guaranteed, even when talent was undeniable. They faced closed doors, dismissed opportunities, and promises that turned to nothing. Yet, Gladys was not discouraged. Her voice carried faith, and faith does not break easily. Everything changed when they signed with Motown Records in 1966. Motown, the label that introduced the world to Marvin Gaye, Diana Ross, Stevie Wonder, and The Temptations. A musical empire. A cultural revolution. And now, Gladys Knight and the Pips were part of that legacy. At Motown, they recorded the song that would become their first worldwide breakthrough. I Heard It Through the Grapevine. Gladys sang it with fire, not as gossip, not as rumor, but as heartbreak, betrayal, and raw human pain. Her voice cracked in the right moments. It soared when emotion demanded it. And when the final chorus arrived, the world understood something clearly. Gladys Knight didn't just sing songs. She felt them. And when she felt them, everyone listening felt them too. The song became a massive hit, selling millions of records and reaching audiences across oceans. For the first time, the name Gladys Knight was spoken with reverence and awe. But she was not done. The late 60s and early 70s became the era where Gladys Knight and the Pips defined themselves. They released If I Were Your Woman, a song dripping with longing and emotional honesty. Gladys delivered every note like a confession, powerful, intimate, unbreakable. Audiences didn't just enjoy these songs, they lived inside them. And then, in 1973, came the song that would forever solidify Gladys Knight as the Empress of Soul. Midnight Train to Georgia. It was a story of leaving fame behind. A story of choosing love over ambition. A story about sacrifice, vulnerability, and quiet courage. Gladys didn't sing it as a performer, she sang it as a woman who understood the cost of dreams. The world listened, and the world cried with her. The song won the Grammy Award for Best R&B Vocal Performance and became one of the most beloved soul songs of all time. From that moment forward, Gladys Knight was more than a star. She was an emotion, a voice that could break a heart and mend it in the same breath. The Pips continued to support her with grace, loyalty, and joy, never overshadowing her, never stepping away from the foundation they built together. They were not just a group. They were a family carved into music history. Through the 1970s, they continued their rise, releasing hits, performing worldwide, and becoming icons of soul, R&B, and gospel. Their style was elegance without pretense. Their performances were passion without ego. Their sound was timeless. Gladys Knight had arrived. Not by chance. Not by hype. But by soul, real, lived, and unfiltered. She had become the voice of love, heartbreak, faith, and strength for millions. And the world was listening. For all her success, for all the applause, awards, and standing ovations, Gladys Knight's journey was never free of struggle. Her story is one of strength, not the loud kind, but the quiet kind that survives when no one is watching. Behind every performance, behind every flawless vocal run, behind every smile on stage, there were battles the world did not see. Broken heart loss and heartbreak within the family. Even as Gladys Knight and the Pips rose to global fame, life tested her again and again. In 1979, her beloved sister Brenda, who had once stood beside her in the earliest version of the Pips, passed away suddenly. The loss shook her deeply. Gladys had always been the emotional anchor of her family, but even anchors can break under the weight of grief. She continued performing, not because it was easy, but because music had always been her way to survive pain. Her voice became more soulful, more vulnerable, more human. She carried Brenda's memory in every song she sang. Ring marriage, love, and hard lessons. Gladys Knight married early, still a teenager when she first tried to build a life outside fame. But love in the spotlight is never simple. Her first marriage ended. Then her second. Each time, she tried again with hope, sincerity, and trust. But heartbreak is not gentle, especially for a woman whose voice carried the weight of emotion for the world. She faced a devastating challenge when one of her husbands struggled with addiction and gambling, a struggle that pulled Gladys into financial hardship. There were nights she cried quietly, not as a star, but as a woman trying to hold together everything she loved. But Gladys did not collapse. She rose, like she always had, gained her own fight with addiction. Few people know that Gladys Knight herself developed a gambling addiction, not out of thrill, but as a way of coping with emotional exhaustion. Casinos became an escape, a place where the noise could drown the silence inside. But when she realized what it was doing to her life, her stability, and her mental peace, she walked away. Completely, fully, and forever. She once said, "When God tells me to move, I move." And she did, with courage and clarity that few possess. Baby motherhood, responsibility, and strength. Despite fame, tours, and global stages, Gladys Knight never abandoned her most sacred role, mother. She raised her children with discipline, faith, and unconditional love. She taught them that fame is temporary, but character is eternal. Her son once shared, "My mother didn't just sing about love. She lived it." Even at the height of her career, she found time to cook dinner, attend school events, and speak to her children about faith, respect, and humility. She was a star to the world, but to her family she was simply mom. If there is one force that has shaped Gladys Knight's entire life, it is faith. Her voice comes from somewhere deeper than technique or training. It comes from spirit. In her darkest moments, loss, heartbreak, addiction, exhaustion, she turned to faith not as tradition, but as strength. She did not ask for an easier life. She prayed for the strength to walk through the life she had. And that strength became the core of her music. Every note, every word, every breath. Gladys Knight sings from the soul, because she has lived everything she sings. Cloud with Rain, a woman of unbreakable grace. What makes Gladys Knight extraordinary is not simply her voice, but her grace. She lived through eras of racism, industry rejection, personal loss, and emotional battles, yet she never allowed bitterness to take her voice. She remained gentle, steady, grounded. Her life is proof that you can break and still remain beautiful. You can fall and still rise with dignity. You can lose everything and still continue with love in your heart. Gladys Knight is not just a singer. She is a testament, a reminder that the strongest souls are forged in fire. As the decades passed, Gladys Knight's voice did not fade. It deepened. It matured. It gained new layers of wisdom and emotional depth that could only come from a life that had been lived fully, painfully, beautifully. Her career became a living timeline of American music. Every era carried her voice in a new form, yet always recognizable, always grounded in soul. She earned 7 Grammy Awards, spanning R&B, pop, and gospel. Few artists in history have crossed genres with such grace and authenticity. Her success was never dependent on trends or industry expectations. It came from the emotional truth she carried into every performance. Her albums with the Pips became landmarks in soul music history. Songs of heartbreak, devotion, hope, and endurance spread through communities around the world. These records were not simply entertainment. They became part of people's lives, their memories, their healing, their love stories, and their losses. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, the group traveled globally, performing for audiences who did not always speak the same language but who understood the emotional power of her voice. The Pips became renowned for their synchrony, their smooth harmonies, and their elegant stage presence. They were not backup performers. They were pillars that supported one of the greatest voices in music history. In the late 1980s, after nearly 4 decades together, the Pips stepped away from the stage. Their retirement marked the end of one of the longest and most respected group careers in American R&B. Their contributions became permanently written into the history of American music. But for Gladys Knight, this was not an ending. It was the beginning of an entirely new chapter. She shifted into gospel and inspirational music with the same sincerity that had defined her soul career. Her gospel work was not driven by industry demand or commercial expectation. It was driven by personal truth. Her voice became more reflective, more inward, more connected to the spiritual foundation of her upbringing. Listeners could hear not only skill but wisdom. Her influence can be traced across generations. Artists in R&B, soul, pop, gospel, and contemporary music name her as a guiding light in how to interpret emotion through voice. She demonstrated that power is not always loud. Strength does not always shout. Grace can be forceful without ever raising its tone. In award shows, tributes, and cultural documentaries, Gladys Knight is spoken of not as a performer, but as a standard, a model of excellence, a blueprint for emotional honesty in music. Her stage presence remains unmistakable. She does not dramatize or exaggerate. She stands still, she closes her eyes, and the music moves through her with clarity and purpose. Audiences do not simply listen. They feel. She has been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame along with the Pips. She has been recognized by national institutions, cultural councils, and public honors for her contributions to American music and global artistry. Yet through all of it, she has carried herself with humility. She has never chased attention. She has never demanded acknowledgement. She has lived her career with dignity, steadiness, and quiet faith. Today, her influence is present in every artist who sings not to impress, but to connect. Every vocalist who uses breath, silence, and stillness as part of expression carries part of the legacy that Gladys Knight helped define. Her music is not frozen in time. It continues to live in new voices, new generations, new interpretations. It remains relevant because it was never tied to fashion or moment. It was tied to the human heart. Gladys Knight became more than a performer. She became a cultural foundation, a voice that taught the world how to feel and to feel deeply. As time moved forward, Gladys Knight did not step away from the world. She simply stepped into a different kind of light. Not the bright, demanding light of constant fame, but a warmer, more peaceful light that comes from a life understood, honored, and lived with purpose. She continues to perform, but now she chooses when and how. Her concerts are not displays of vocal power. They are gatherings of spirit. Audiences sit quietly at first, feeling the weight of presence, the closeness of someone who has lived deeply and survived with grace. Her voice remains rich. The upper tones may be gentler now, but the emotional depth has only grown. There is a warmth in her tone that carries decades of memory. There is a steadiness that comes only from knowing who you are and no longer needing the world to decide it for you. Gladys Knight's life today is centered around family, faith, and the joy of continuing her craft on her own terms. She is a grandmother and a great-grandmother. She is a matriarch in the truest sense. Her family looks to her not just as an artist, but as a guide, a steady presence, a source of wisdom and comfort. Her faith remains at the center of everything. It is not a performance. It is the foundation upon which she stands. It is the reason she has endured. It is the reason she has remained whole. In interviews, in appearances, in performances, Gladys carries herself with quiet dignity. She does not need to prove anything. Her legacy speaks for itself. She has lived through every phase of the music industry. She has witnessed the rise of genres, the fall of eras, the reshaping of sound around technology and culture. Through it all, she has remained unchanged in essence. A voice of emotion, a voice of truth, a voice of soul. Her influence is felt in every artist who values storytelling over spectacle. It is heard in every singer who understands that the purpose of music is not to be impressive, but to be human. The world measures success in numbers and fame. Gladys Knight measures success in connection. She has performed for royalty, presidents, halls of thousands, and rooms of few. But the core of her art has remained the same. One voice, one heart, one human being reaching out to another. Gladys Knight's story is not a story of rising and falling. It is a story of endurance. It is the life of someone who held on to dignity through change, challenge, and time. Her legacy is not frozen in history. It continues to move, to inspire, to touch. Her songs remain in rotation not because they are old, but because they are timeless. They speak to the human spirit in a way that does not age. She has become a living symbol of grace in an industry often defined by rush, ambition, and exhaustion. Where others were consumed by fame, Gladys Knight carried it gently and never let it determine her worth. She stands now as one of the last great voices of the classic soul era. A keeper of memory. A guardian of musical truth. A reminder of what artistry looks like when shaped by sincerity rather than desire for acclaim. Her legacy is not simply in music, but in the lives of those she has touched. People who played her records in times of heartbreak. People who found strength in her resilience. People who learned to love themselves through the softness of her voice. This is the story of Gladys Knight. A woman who rose from humble beginnings. A woman who carried her family with her into history. A woman who turned pain into art and faith into endurance. A woman whose voice has comforted generations. She is not just a legend because of awards, records, or recognition. She is a legend because she never stopped singing from the heart. She has lived a life of music, a life of love, a life of grace. Her legacy is carved into the soul of American music. Her voice remains a guiding light through every era of sound. And her story stands as proof that real greatness does not fade. It only deepens. Gladys Knight is not simply remembered. She is felt. In the music. In the memory. In the soul. Folded hands. If this tribute moved you, please like this video, subscribe to Gone Legends, and share it with others who celebrate the stars we've lost and the legacies that never fade.